I just want to make a record to go across the United States.
People dance around the question and ask the question carefully, like, oh, parking lot with riding so low.
The car I got right now. Yeah, well, my grandson, I have one, and one of them lives in California, works for Intuit, which is a high-end area of California, works for Porsche dealer. Well, he knows, so he has got to work around him. And he said, Grandma, I gotta show you these cars, and he brought me in. And he wants to be here where this side and the other bigger. They must have 50 Ferraris, and they're all in there prepared. And I just said, that says something about Ferrari if they're all in that repair shop. They had I could never cross this life, and not even, I wouldn't even there's something art. They were repairing and the man, I know, said, I see the car opens up from the hood all the way back. Here we are. We're live. All the way back. Oh, goodness. Plugged into a computer. Oh, I see that you have a plug in a computer. Are you carrying it that way? And he goes, I don't touch the car. This car's plugged into the mechanics in Italy. The mechanics in Italy will tell me what I need to do. The car belongs to the body. It's not even owned. Like, these are like these cars they lend out to celebrities. Really?
Yeah. And they don't let any mechanics do
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. The Italians were fixing the car. He was just there to do what they told him to do. But I've never seen, they had a whole showroom full of these cars that, they're probably $1 million or more each. They were just beautiful. The way they were finished was like a work of art. It was beautiful. None of them had like headlights that looked like headlights.
He was an engineer and he assembled a functioning body, like everything. Gas and engine behind it. It had a top speed of 4 miles an hour. And of course, it was all split apart, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. The one that's over here. And there's another one I saw was like here and
Cleveland. We watched them separate.
Well, I would.
Well, if you ever see 2004 Honda Accord on the road, Ferrari tag, that's my car.
It says Ferrari?
It's got a Ferrari.
Oh, yeah? What color?
Yellow. Here, I'll pull it up. The logo is yellow.
This is the car I have. It's slow, it's only 7 inches off. It's right at me when I ordered, I couldn't even keep my carport. I got all that. My carport, so I put down mats.
Clean.
Two-seater. My husband passed away because he got all that kind of car. Very tall, he can't fit in it. So,
There you go. If you ever find out on the road, you found me.
okay, I'll look for it.
Got a few snuggles. People look at it and see the Ferrari tag on the rest of the car.
Wait a minute, wait, this doesn't make sense.
There was one time that some kid behind the
He just was so glad he got it.
Sure. I'm delivering DoorDash to the Ferrari. Go. But if you're paying $30 a mile, Identify more as South Texas.
The state line, was it enough?
We hope that you enjoyed your dinner this evening, and if you are still eating, please continue to do so, and help yourself to any of the desserts that are left over.
But I have the joy of welcoming up Cindy Decker, who has kind of helped coordinate a lot of this event, and it works with the Hunger Poverty Action Group that does a lot of work with Jan and Joe, and she is actually going to introduce our guest speakers for tonight. So, but really give a lot of thanks for Cindy for helping coordinate tonight. This was, thank you, thank you, thank you. And the many Hunger Poverty Action Group members that are here helping and volunteering, and all of you who helped make food and cook food, and all of you that helped us eat it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I was going to thank everyone too. Last year when I did OMG, it was a little, well, who do I talk to? Who do I ask? This year we've put together a checklist, which was very, very helpful. I don't think that's on the checklist, so I have to. So anyway, as the checklist has taught me that all the people that need to go into making one of these, we have to thank the hospitality team, the streaming team, the sound team, communications, and security teams. And I always like to thank Debbie and Karen, who are always at the ready for whatever you need. So just want to highlight two HPAG events that are coming up soon. This Sunday, we're going to kick off the Super Bowl Sunday event that we do every year. The youth will be doing a skit. And then HPAG helps when the canned goods are collected to deliver those to various food banks in the area. And the second event to highlight, and get this one on your calendar, is the Empty Bowls event. It'll be our third annual Empty Bowls event this year. And that's going to be on Saturday, April 27th. And it's here in the Fellowship Hall. And because of that, we have a limited number of tickets. So when the tickets go on sale, you might want to consider purchasing one early. In August 2021, a month after Kabul fell to the Taliban, Catholic Charities was asked by the State Department to help with the arrival of the large number of resulting refugees. This is one of the largest influx of refugees in the agency's 95-year history. Staff was increased in several locations, including Roanoke. One of the many organizations that volunteered to help was Christ Episcopal Church, Roanoke. Jan Therian and another congregational member, Joe Mott, Joe you met last year, formed the Episcopal Community Sponsorship Roanoke. It was the first faith group to become part of the Catholic Community Sponsorship Program. And Jan and Joe are our speakers tonight. Joe is a native of Northern Virginia. He received his undergraduate degree from George Mason University and earned a Juris Doctorate from the University of Richmond, T.C. Williams School of Law in 1981. His law career is extensive, having worked in private practice, Virginia state government, and the Defense and State Departments. He has served as the Assistant United States Attorney for the Western District of Virginia, as resident legal advisor in Iraq, instructor for trial advocacy for Pakistani prosecutors, and was the Justice Attaché in Kabul, Afghanistan from 2018 to 2022. Jan Therian served an illustrious 30-year career in Veterans Affairs hospitals from Seattle to Georgia and Salem, Virginia. She began as a nurse and quickly moved into unit management, and finally as the Associate Chief for Primary Care in Salem. She was part of significant changes toward patient-centered healthcare and was a trusted leader for the staff and patients. Upon her retirement, she found her way into chaplaincy, 2 years of hospital chaplaincy training, and then as a chaplain for hospice and continuous care retirement centers. She is one of the few non-ordained endorsed professional chaplains in the Episcopal Church. When she retired for the second time over 2 years ago, the Holy Spirit and Melissa Hayes Smith led her to create and lead a team to resettle Afghan families in the Roanoke Valley. This ministry has become a compelling congregation-wide collaboration under her leadership involving 8 churches. And one of those churches is Trinity, and we've been active in helping them furnish the first house that one of the families needed. And also Pastor Philip dipped into the pastor discretionary fund to purchase new winter coats and bicycles 1 year. We're almost at the end. Jan and Joe, we are delighted that both of you could be with us tonight and share your experiences and those of the Afghan Resettlement Ministry as you have walked with the Nazari family the past 2 years. Please join me in welcoming Jan and Joe.
Well, first of all, we'd like to say thank you to all of you for inviting us to be here. And my thanks again to Linda Stroop, who is the first TEP person I talked with when we opened up the invitation to the Roanoke Convocation. And there's a lot more behind the formation of Episcopal Community Sponsorship. I'll spare you a lot of the details because Joe says I always talk too long and then he gets the last 5 minutes. But anyway, I'll try to do better. Is this better? Okay. We basically will start with Joe giving you a brief overview of where is Afghanistan? You know, what happened there? and where did our families come from. And then I will go into a bit more of the detail about how we became the Episcopal Community Sponsorship, which was no easy task, I must tell you. But in honor of Melissa Hayes Smith, I don't know if any of you knew her, they called her the Deacon Warrior of Southwest Diocese of Virginia. And Melissa died of cancer last year. So we're really living her legacy, proudly so, very proudly so. But I'm going to turn it over to Joe first, and I didn't list my degrees because we'd be here for half of the night. So I'm going to let Joe tell you a little bit more about Afghanistan, and then we'll get into the formation of the ministry, and then tell you all the wonders that you have done with us for these last 2 years.
There you go. Good evening, everybody. And thank you for the kind introduction, Cindy. More importantly for this group, I was also the assistant Commonwealth attorney here from 1984 to 1989, and it's always good to come back to Franklin County. Lived in Rocky Mount for a number of years. Most of my career was with the Department of Justice as an assistant U.S. attorney in Roanoke, and it's not that widely known, but DOJ has a fairly active presence overseas as well, and does a lot of prosecutorial training in underdeveloped countries that are generally not the garden spots of the world. So over the years, I've done training gigs to Bangladesh, to Pakistan, to Bosnia, and places like that. From 2007 to 2009, I served on a provincial reconstruction team in Tikrit, Iraq. And then from November 2018 to November 2020, I was the justice attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. In all of those, basically, you did rule of law work, working with courts and justice sector officials to try to better the rule of law. Afghanistan, I think when I was here last year, I did a little quiz show. I'll probably forego the quiz show, but it's not the Middle East, it's Central Asia. And, last year we tried to guess what all the stands were, but Afghanistan is the country in Burgundy there. It shares a long western border with Iran, and a even longer eastern border with Pakistan. This is Turkmenistan to the northwest, and then Uzbekistan, and then Tajikistan kind of directly north. One thing a lot of people don't know is that it actually shares a border with China. The mountains get very tall. It's sort of the western end of the Himalayas, and that little peninsula there touches the light blue western border of China. So it's strategically situated. It's been a crossroads, a trade crossroads over the years. These 34 provinces, the significance is our two families now. One lived in Kabul, which of course is the capital. Most of the population is centered there. And then the family that we've recently been working with is from, they call it Ghazni province, a little bit southwest of Kabul. Now, what brought me to this ministry, besides Jan Therian and Melissa Hayes Smith, is while I was in Afghanistan, I had 4 employees who worked for me as translators, kind of interlocutors with the Afghans, who were all caught in the debacle at the airport in August of 2021. They were eligible for what they call these special immigrant visas for working with the U.S. government, and they had a really hard time getting to the airport and getting out, but eventually all 4 did get out. and they were successfully resettled in Northern Virginia. When they got to this country, I wanted to do what I could to help them, so I helped them get settled up there. There are about 120,000 Afghan refugees worldwide. I think that says 76,000. I think the final number was about 79,000 that came out in the airlift. Most of them on these special immigrant visas, some on what they call humanitarian parole, where they were paroled into the country for humanitarian reasons. And the way the refugee resettlement works is it's carved up among different agencies. Commonwealth Catholic Charities has it in this area. In the DC area, it's Lutheran Family Services. So basically the scheme is they come here, and then these charities will help them for a period of 90 days. And during that time, they're, getting them licensed, making sure that all the vaccinations are done, getting to school, getting work permits, getting them on social services benefits if they're eligible. And again, in this area, that's administered by Commonwealth Catholic Charities. And besides my former employees, there were other Afghans who didn't work for the government, but who were in imminent danger from their relationship with the U.S. government, whom I had worked with while I was in Afghanistan. So even though I retired from DOJ, I did a bunch of applications to come to this country. And so I did that work for free, and also kind of approached Commonwealth Catholic Charities saying, what do they need? And at that time, the main need was for affordable housing, which is hard to come by not only here, but in many places around the country. So this is probably a good point for Jan to pick it up, because our paths intersected at some point, and that's a good time for you to talk about how you got involved.
Well, why don't you stay with me? Because we've sort of been at one another's side for a long time now. So I was a professional, I was in healthcare for 30 years. I was a senior management person, the Mahogany Row people. And I really loved healthcare a lot, particularly working with veterans in 4 different medical centers throughout the United States. I retired once in 2010, and 2 years later, God kicked me in the rear end and said, I'm not done. And so I talked with my priest, and she said, you've worked with pastoral care and everything. Have you ever thought about CPE? And I didn't even know what that was. But anyway, I wound up taking a year of training through the University of Virginia at Roanoke Memorial, and then got a residency at Duke University. I was, out of the class of 5, I was the only one who didn't have a collar on. So we're setting a little bit of difference, I think, chaplains are, the professional chaplaincy program. Anyway, after 10 years of serving as a chaplain in the Durham, Burlington, Chapel Hill area, and I also worked in hospice in Roanoke for 18 months. I would, as they call it, schlep up and down the road from North Carolina to Roanoke, because I have a home in Roanoke. I retired after 10 years and went back to my home. For what you don't know, we don't know what happened, but I married an Episcopal priest, and it's a woman, and neither one of us could ever figure it out, but we're quite happy to live a wild and wonderful life after both being married and all that sort of stuff in the past. So you have a household with 2 chaplains, and we're sitting on a Saturday night after we had, quote, retired. She was a university chaplain for like 40 years at Yale, and then Hollins and Roanoke, and then at Elon. And I said to her, how do you stop being a chaplain? That was on a Saturday night. Afghanistan had just fallen. But anyway, we went to church the next day, and I'm praying. And suddenly I hear someone kneel down beside me, and it's the warrior deacon, Melissa. And she says, Jan. I said, Melissa, what? She said, we want you to coordinate the Afghan resettlement ministry. And I thought, okay, there is a God. And that started it. She said to me that week later, get yourself a committee and get going. I said, you want me to pick it? She said, yes. So the first person I thought of was this guy. I thought, I need him. And I started thinking about the different kinds of skill sets we need for resettling people who are new to our country and have been through trauma, war, loss, what have you. So we formed a team. Joe, we have retired school teachers, we have bankers, we have educators, we have a very high up official with the Carillion healthcare system, which has proven to be very helpful. We have people who worked teaching English as a second language. We have a banker. I would love to have him do my taxes. He's so good. But anyway, our team began, and maybe you could show the advisory team that we had. That's the beginning. That was our rudder. And that's taken on the steps of Christ Episcopal Church. And probably what, Joe?
February 20.
Maybe February,
Yeah.
because we had already gone. Melissa and I talked with, well, I had a long conversations with Mark, with our bishop, and he gave me some good advice. And we then approached the Roanoke Convocation. Melissa and I gave an invitation to the churches in our convocation just before convention in 2022. And your church was one of the first ones to give us a call and say, count us in. And you've been with us ever since. And within a week's time, we had 6 churches. And then Christ Martinsville said, we want to do what we can. And Rocky Mount was the last one to join us. So we basically have all 5 of the Episcopal churches in Roanoke and then in the outlying areas.
And as a predicate to that, I think Jan first talked to Episcopal Migration Ministries,
Yes.
but they basically said, no, out of our
Yeah.
bailiwick. And then we took it up with CCC, and eventually they had 3 options for participation depending on the level of support. And we decided on that and then entered into an MOU with
Which was no easy.
Commonwealth Catholic Charities.
That was no easy task.
Yeah.
They basically told us, well, we've never formed an affiliation with another faith-based group. And I told them, I said, Episcopalians are really fun people. Just give us a try. But we went to the state level and they drafted up this MOU. And so we became officially the Episcopal Community Sponsorship, which is what that's our official name. And I'm very, very proud of that. And of the 8 churches that have just walked this journey with us for 2 years. We have a photograph of several of them when we got our first family in March of 2022 through Commonwealth Catholic Charities. We trained with them for 90 days, and they helped enormously with the children, healthcare, and so on. We kicked in.
Yeah, I'd add that it was sort of necessary to work with them because what they had done up to that point, we needed to pick up and run with after 90 days.
Right.
Who to talk to at social services. What's their vaccination status? Do you have the medical records, that sort of thing. So it was not absolutely required, but it was very helpful, certainly, to work with CCC.
It was a wise decision to walk at their side for 30 days, for 90 days. We learned a great deal from them. And the work that they have done is just commendable. Just commendable. But we have become, I think, in the last year and a half, pretty knowledgeable on what it means. I mean, I didn't know what resettlement was, let alone what do you do? We had no idea. We now have, well, we got the first family in March. And do you have the group photo of the?
Yeah.
Of our team, of the volunteers from the other churches?
Well, there's one.
Yeah, there's one. This is before Cindy came along, and Linda wasn't there, but this is at one of our meetings we started with a family of 5, Naeem and his wife, and their 2 sons, and Naeem's mother. They are.
That's Naeem and
That's
his wife.
Naeem Mujda,
This is his brother Kareem, and
who
his
showed
wife.
up 3 weeks later, and we thought, what's happened here? Because
There were surprises all along. All of a sudden, we had another
Yeah,
family. They were
'cause-
living in the same house,
well,
the same 3-bedroom townhouse.
yeah, Joe and I visited. That was one of the requirements. We had to make family visits every week to make sure everything was going okay. And we went for 2 weeks, and we're getting to really, become familiar with them and found out what their needs were and how we could best help them. And then we go in on the 3rd week, and there's 11 people in that apartment. And when we got out, I won't repeat what Joe said because it was, but it was quite a surprise for us. But it was Naeem's brother who had come from Maryland with his family of 6.
He had been
So-
resettled in Baltimore, and he didn't like Baltimore. He liked Roanoke a whole lot better.
Right. The family there were 5 brothers and 3 sisters, and they were scattered. The sisters were in Maryland. 3 of the
Connecticut.
brothers were in Connecticut. Abdul Kareem was in Maryland. And somehow Muhammad Naeem wound up in Roanoke. And 2 of his sisters as well. So it has been a journey like I can't really put into words. I hope someday to be able to try what we have learned from them and what they have given to us.
Yeah,
As-
yeah.
No. And also, I think, we're part of Becoming Beloved Community, which is an Episcopal initiative nationwide. And the fact that we have 8 churches that have continued to work together for 2 years for a common purpose in itself is Becoming Beloved Community. I have people from the Gucci Episcopal Church in Roanoke. That's what we call it. And they don't care if we say that. But anyway, they say, well, I didn't know you did all those things. And I said, well, you never asked. But anyway, we've become friends. We work very closely together. And the skill sets of our team now are just incredible. Whenever a need comes up, somebody says, I got it. I'll do it.
Yeah, and it's just fallen naturally into
It's
skill sets, I
just-
think. Kind of looking at some of the things we
Yeah.
do, the furnishings for apartment, this parish really helped with that and basically furnished the first apartment. But we've got, language teachers retired who do English as a second language. We've got nurses. We've got former school teachers for education, business persons for financial literacy, transportation, people that drive, people with trucks, immigration, all these family members needed to adjust their status in the U.S. They came here on what's called humanitarian parole,
Mm.
which is not a permanent status. So the next step, you go parole to asylum, to green card or permanent residence to naturalization. So I'd never done immigration law in my life, but I've learned some of it and did a bunch of asylum applications for the family members. But um, and people just kind of fell into the things that they were comfortable with and were good at, that were also needs of the families. Um, uh, it's been a fine line to walk sometimes, because the idea is to make them self-sufficient, and there's a natural tendency to kind of want to take care of those that you have a relationship with. So we sometimes have to check ourselves to make sure that they're doing all they can for themselves on the road to self-sufficiency.
Well, and Joe continues to remind us of our Western sensibilities and sensitivities, which, that's one thing that has really been a beautiful journey for us. Our group has grown from that first group that was on the stair steps of Christ Church into a group of 14 people, and we Zoom now every other week. Cindy is one of those people. And like Joe said, no matter what the challenges is presented, somebody says, I've got it. We're covering that. It's been, we didn't realize, I don't think, how daunting it would be to realize the absence of medical care and dental care that these people have suffered from. Mujda, who is on the far left next to, well, get your little magic red spot there. She and Naeem lost a set of twins. They died in utero when they were in Afghanistan, and they removed them surgically. And when they were doing the surgery, they severed her uterine artery and several nerves, which have left her, she just about died. And she suffered some brain damage from the loss of blood, plus she has neurological deficit in her legs as a result. They all have cavities like you can't believe. Our dentist is in Hardy. He's the only dentist who takes Medicaid. And I think you use him also. No? But the schooling has been really a beautiful journey. We have retired educators who they check on those children like they're their own. They go to all the parent-teacher meetings with the parents and the children. One of our members is in the formal contact for any issues that come up with the students should they have issues. English is a second language. We have people going twice a week teaching the adults, mainly the women,
And
English.
at the beginning, that was perhaps the hardest part, because the language skills were very limited with these
Yeah.
families, because they hadn't worked for the government, unlike the SIV people. So we became more proficient with Google Translate and technical
you
ways
did.
to overcome that. Well, some of
You
us
did.
did. And I had a kind of greetings level knowledge of Dari, but that's become better as time went on, as their English skills got better. It's still largely oral with this family. There's not a lot of written communication.
Well, yeah, and the oral is the hardest part for them. Like, we've had to make arrangements for medical appointments, dental appointments, to make sure that one of us is notified. There are 3 of us that are on their medical records, and we get communication from for appointment reminders, because they just don't quite understand all the words on that piece of paper yet. I mean, we started with the day that Naeem brought out an envelope and asked me, "What is this?" And it was a power bill. And he said, "What do I do with this?" I said, "Well, let's open it and see what's inside." So we looked and he said, "Well, it says $68.88. I said, "Yes." "What do I do with this?" I said, "You have to pay that." "How?" So one of our volunteers had set up a bank account for him, got him checks. We got him on bill pay. But he said, "Now, what do I do if I write the check? And you will help me with the check, yes?" Because they don't do that. And so I said, "Well, we'll write the check out. You'll put it in an envelope and put a stamp on it." And he looked at me and he said, "What is a stamp?" So I asked him, "Well, what do you do in your country?" He said, "It's so much more simple." He said, I know I owe this kind of money. I go knock on the door and I say, 'Here you are.' They say thank you and I say bye."
I think that's pretty close to a quote.
I say bye. But we always have need for more people who are interested in learning from these people. They're a very persecuted group of Muslims. They're Hazara, which are hated by the Taliban. Over 63% of the Hazara population in Afghanistan has been killed by the Taliban. And they-
part of it's religious. Hazara are Shiite sect Muslims, and they're viewed as kafirs by many radical Sunnis, including the Taliban. So it made my job easier in terms of the asylum process because, there's a wealth of documentation of the oppression that the Hazara suffered over the years
Uh.
In Afghanistan. And, that's one of the standards for being granted asylum.
when they had their interview for asylum status, when they returned home, Joe and another one of their friends took them to Arlington for their interviews. And when they got back, I asked then 12-year-old Benjamin, when they asked you what would happen if you went back to Afghanistan, what would you tell them? He said, "I told them I would be a dead boy." That's from a 12-year-old. Yeah. So he remembers quite a bit from their escape. But Joe was with them all the way on the asylum.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. It's probably worthwhile about how they got out briefly.
I think it's incredible.
See, they kind of rented apartments in the early 2000s to international contractors, but they never worked directly for a foreign government where they got a paycheck or a contractor check or anything like that. But, because of their status as Hazara, they'd kind of been run out of Afghanistan and Pakistan when the Taliban came the first time in the 90s. They went into hiding, and Kabul fell the 31st. They were going from house to house hiding. But then one of the groups that they had rented apartments to was an air charter service who had the contract with the State Department for what they call Embassy Air back then. And they made contact with him, and through some kind of shady means, probably involving some bribery, they were able to fly out of Mazar-e-Sharif, which is in the north of the country. But they all rallied up in Mazar, got on an aircraft, and then 54 family members came out on one aircraft. So it's quite a story of how they got out, and they were very fortunate to do so.
But the wife of the contractor is the one who told them, "Naeem, it's time to get your family together."
Yeah.
And
They were communicating with them.
They were
certainly.
communicating
Yeah.
with them, and the contracting agency is based in South Africa, South Africa.
But he lives in Northern Virginia, but he's South African by
Yeah.
birth, I think.
But she called Naeem and said, you know, you must gather your family quickly. Get all of them together. And they, like you say, 54 of them. And one of the people with the contracting company said, you know, find us a space that's the size of 2 football fields and be there in, 4 in the morning. Make sure you travel at night. And they did that. And they got out when, Joe, just before it fell.
No, it was after it fell.
It was after
Yeah.
it fell.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Naeem told us when we first met him, the family was very affluent in Kabul. They made hand-stitched rugs. They had retail stores where they sold wedding dresses, garments. They had stores in Pakistan. He traveled in many different countries selling his things. And he said, you know, when the Taliban came, we had to escape. We left because we were persecuted. They captured their father because he would not rent to the Taliban. And they beat him. And he died, 10 days later?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
the first time.
That's the first time. But Muhammad said, when we left the first time, when the Taliban took over, I knew what it was like to go from making 2 or 3 phone calls a day and then going and enjoying my fruit trees, because I had people that did all my work, but I went down to 0. He said, then the Americans came, and I came back to Afghanistan, and I came back up. And then when the Americans left, I'm back to 0 again. But he said, you know what? I've been to 0 twice now. I know how to get back up. So there are very resilient people. They have taught us much about what it means to really, I mean, they are so devout with their faith. And they so believe, that Allah will provide. And when you are working with them, as we work with them, you become their family. And the first time we had a meal with them, they said, you are now our family forever. And they mean that. So I always address them as family and friend.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
these are just some of the things we've helped them with. We had some bullets up there of different areas. That, by the way, one of them was a 81-year-old grandma who, just a quick anecdote, doing the asylum process. Part of that's an interview.
Sure.
Most of my work with DOJ was trial work, so I'm used to prepping witnesses for hearings. But poor old Faiz Begum, she's uneducated. She's never been to school at all. Doesn't write in Dari, let alone English. Has no English comprehension, and on top of that, she's deaf. You've got to kind of scream in her ear to get her to hear. And so that was quite a challenge to prep Faiz Begum for her interview. But she's a sweet woman.
Are you going to tell them what she told them?
We can.
Go ahead. I need someone to take care of me.
And, then a gentle way, well, were there any other reasons why you fled Afghanistan? Maybe your Naeem's father got run off. So we got through it, and everybody's been granted asylum, by the way.
Yeah. Thanks to you, Joe.
Well,
Yeah.
They had a lot going for them. These are the 2 spouses. This was on a moving day, I think.
Yeah, we were
Took
getting
a-
them into more affordable housing. When they first moved, they were in townhouses that were so far beyond what they were able to earn. I mean, they just, they were sinking financially. You know, they could barely make do, let alone save anything. So we found affordable housing.
Yeah. Moved from the initial townhouse to
That's one of
a
our
more
volunteers from
affordable,
Christ Church. He was,
moving crew. This is slides titled medical because, as Jan mentioned, Mojda had considerable problems and was a high risk pregnancy, and we kind of helped them through that process. And little Miss Isan was born last
Mm.
February, and that's her with Faiz Bagoon.
well, and that's where, you know, we have wonderful health care in Roanoke, but Carillion was just incredible. I called the member of our advisory team, who is a senior executive at Carillion, and said, because Mohammed Naeem called me one night at 10:30. He said, Miss Jan, I am terrified. I said, what's the matter? He said, Mujda, 2 months now, nothing. I said, oh my goodness. So the next day we were at the doctor and they did an ultrasound and she was almost 3 months by then. And I will never forget, she's lying on the table and the OB-GYN woman is telling her, can you hear the baby's heartbeat? And she just started crying. Tears just started running down her face. So I cried too. I cry very easily. It was just a moment in my life that I will never forget. But with Carillion, between regular OB-GYN checks every 2 weeks, they also provided for high-risk pregnancies, which we saw them every month. And then in her last 2 months, they saw her every week to make sure everything was going okay.
And one of the interesting cultural features at the birth was in Afghanistan, it's kind of like old school here. When my first child was born, the men went to the waiting room and smoked cigars while the spouses, the wives, had the baby. And that's kind of the way it is in Afghanistan. And Naeem didn't know what to do being inside the hospital while his wife was giving birth. It was a new experience for him.
But we had a birthing team. Joe and Margaret Ann. Boo. Boo's one of our nurses. Margaret Ann just does everything for it. You know, she's a tremendous organizer. Okay.
You know,
So-
immigration was interesting, involved several trips to Arlington, which is where all the hearings are held. This is a shot with Naeem and Benjamin in front of the Capitol, of course. That's the iced over pond at the Capitol looking back towards the Washington Monument.
Benjamin.
Yeah. You know, these are just some shots. You know, our education folks really helped with registration and you know, helping the kids find their way in school. I don't know who that woman is.
I don't know.
And we've learned a lot from being associated with this family. I had known that birthdays are not a big thing in Afghanistan. Often, particularly the older generations, they don't know their birth date. But of course, it's a big thing here, and we talked Mojda into a birthday party. We may have bit off more than we can chew with 11 family members having to do 11 birthdays a year, but we've kind of backed off of that.
I think we're about out of time.
Afghan pizza. And just, it's fabulous. That when I was in Afghanistan, my usual, you know, the work week ended on Thursday because Friday was the Sabbath. So on Thursday nights, I would invite Afghans over to my apartment to where we could, you know, have a more down to earth exchange. Security was such that I couldn't be on venue more than 4 hours on an official visit, but I could stay up all night in my apartment. And the usual routine was to order pizza, go to the edge of the green zone, pick up the pizza, and then bring it back onto the compound. So I knew about pizza, but they educated us on how to make Afghan pizza. That's the Illuminalights thing, and just some.
That was Benjamin and his okra.
Yeah, he grows an okra plant. He loves his
He
aquarium.
was so proud that he finally got an okra to grow.
We had a newspaper article. Heather Rousseau, who's on scholarship to the Secular Society, did an article in September of 2022. And then recently, we were approached about a new family, the Rahimi family. He's here on an S visa, so he's a little more squared away from an immigration standpoint. He has a permanent residency. He has a green card already. He has an employment authorization. And he got here in November of 2022, but basically came with nothing. So we've agreed to take them on.
They didn't get here till, they've only been here 2 months.
Yeah, November 2022. No, I said 2022.
23.
November last year. Yeah,
We're okay. We really are. Don't
I'm
we?
with you. I'm a year off. It should be easier because they all have a little better language skills than the Naziri family had when they first got here, and they're charming people.
We'd like to, I wish we had more time, but once again, we want to thank you for walking with us for these 2 years, because without you, it wouldn't happen. Well, we're ready for questions. I see two. Oh, the grandmother? She said, I need someone to take care of me.
Yeah, why does she need to stay in the U.S.? I
Yeah,
need
why-
someone to
what
take
would
care of
happen
me.
if she went back to Afghanistan?
I'm an
They-
old woman. I need someone to take care of me.
Oh, okay. Okay. Did you all hear that question? He wanted to know what the grandma asked. Anyone else have a question? Jeff?
Are you able to connect them with employment opportunities, or are they restricted in that way?
Yeah, that's been a challenge. They were, as far as the Naziri family, they were basically carpet merchants and business people over there, which doesn't really translate that well coming here. So he's been working in a body shop, kind of learning a new trade. Naeem has. But in general terms, that's one of the problems is professional degrees don't translate. If you're a lawyer there, you may be a cab driver here. If you're a doctor there, that doesn't mean you can practice here. So the professionals, generally take a step down in employment opportunities. The Rahimi family, he's a civil engineer, which may translate a little better. I don't think he'll be able to sign off on drawings or anything like that, but I think he's skilled in construction drawings and that sort of thing, construction management.
Other questions?
Just an observation. It looks to me like it's easier to stay as an illegal than as an Afghan refugee.
To stay in Afghanistan?
Nope, it's easier to stay here as an illegal than come in as an Afghan refugee. From all the different hoops and ladders they have to go through.
Yeah, well, that's hard to really say, but particularly for Naeem, it's really been a challenge for him because he was so accustomed to having a good income, to not have to worry about taking care of his family. And now he works from 8 in the morning until sometimes 7:30 at night, 6 days a week. Yeah. Hi. Other questions?
Are there other organizations in the Roanoke area who are working with Afghan families, or is it all under one umbrella, or people on different tracks with different families, or how's that work?
I wish I could answer that. I know there is what they call the Roanoke Resettlement Agency, and I think they are taking, I think they have 3 families. Commonwealth Catholic Charities takes people on entry for their first 90 days, and then they're on their own. So there are still a lot of families out there who don't have the benefits that we've been able to give to these families, to the first 2, let alone what we're going to be able to provide to this 3rd family.
But there are other, just civic-minded individuals in the community that
Yeah.
help them. There are nonprofits.
Like-
I'm thinking the one that has the apartments on Elm Avenue.
Friendship,
The name escapes me. That's
yeah, the
it.
Friendship House.
But there are
and-
other nonprofits.
Yeah.
do
And
it.
like one of the Catholic churches has adopted one family, and they support that family. Largely, I think, through the same things, because they all have basically the same needs. Oh, Daniel.
What does the Afghan pizza taste like? How is it different than American
Oh,
pizza
okay. Well,
or Chicago?
part of it,
pizza?
the crust is a little different. I don't know if you've ever had naan bread. It's more naanish than pizza breadish, and that's a fairly subtle difference, I guess. But if you're a fan of naan, you'll be a fan of Afghan pizza. They use tomatoes in the sauce, but it's just spicier. Okay. Okay.
Well, yeah, and they make their own sauce. They spice it like you and I, like they were of the belief that Americans don't like spicy things until we told them we love spicy things. But then we had to tell them, wait. Yeah. Yeah. But it's very different than our pizza. Yeah, very. Other questions?
Not quite clear. You mentioned they're Shia,
Yes.
and then you also said Hazira.
Yeah.
Could you explain the difference?
Yeah. Quick story, perhaps a legend. But the Hazara, let me pull a picture up here. They have vaguely Oriental features. Like, I don't know for certain, but I would wager that this family is Hazara. The others, from Kandahar have sharper features and, pointier noses, that sort of thing. But the Hazara are said to be the remnants of Genghis Khan. Hazara in Dari means 1,000. And supposedly Genghis Khan left 1,000 warriors behind when he went back to Mongolia. And these are supposed to be, by legend, the descendants of Genghis Khan. But they're also predominantly the Shia sect as well. And ethnically Hazara versus Pashto or something like that. And then religiously Shia. They're Hazara. Yeah.
Other questions? I see Cindy making.
Joe's coming with his silver van on Tuesday. They provided a list of things they need. They're living in a house with a bed and a lamp. And when they leave here next Tuesday, due to Trinity Treasures, they'll be almost fully furnished again. So there'll be a second family that this church has helped. So
Well, you helped that'll be the 3rd family you help. Yeah. No, when I sent him a list, I had talked with Cindy, and I said, what I'm going to do is just send him a list by email and say yes or no, respond yes or no, because he understands English enough. So I listed things, tables, chairs, rugs. They eat on the floor. I said, do you need cushions and pillows for your eating? And he just responded, yes to all. Remember this. He said, it is me, my wife, and we have 4 kids. We got 1 bed.
If there's any other questions? I want to thank Joe and Jan for coming tonight. I just want to also say that for me to be part of this ministry and every Wednesday tune in, going to a Zoom call every week is not necessarily high on my list, but I look forward to these calls because it's just amazing the team that's been put together and their ability and their willingness to step up to whatever the issue is. The work that's gone on to help the boys in school is just amazing, and that wouldn't have happened without the dedication of the 2 or 3 teachers on that staff. All the testing that has to take place and the vaccinations and the follow-up. It's just been an incredible journey for me. And I don't know how families manage that don't have the resources that have been provided by this group. So.
Well, we want to thank you, Cindy, for all you've done and all this Paris has done.
Just remember, you all have been a part of this. Okay, don't forget that. Now, on the 4th of February and the 11th of February, at 9 a.m. at Christ Church, it will be the first time that the family has been willing to meet our parishioners. So several of our partner churches are going to come to the we call it adult forum. Any of you are more than welcome. Now, you might miss your regular service here on Sunday, but you'd be welcome to stay with us. But it will be at 9 a.m. on the 4th of February. Naeem will talk about their exile and why they had to leave. And then on the following Sunday, the whole family will be there, and they will speak about what is life like in their new land. So we would welcome you to be there with us. We're going to wear our Afghan clothes, right? Yeah, Naeem bought us all Afghan outfits. I haven't tried mine on yet, but
Thank you all very much.